This is the Insta360 X3. Is it any good, and is it a worthy upgrade over this, the Insta360 X2? Keep watching to find out. Hey there, welcome to the video. So I've been using Insta360 cameras ever since the launch of the X1. And if you watch the channel, you'll know I'm a big fan of these cameras because they can give you shots that you can't get with any other kind of camera on the market. Now the question is this new X3 any good, and is it worth the upgrade? Well, me and Lewis have been out on the streets filming a ton of footage with this, so we're going to jump into that now and show you all of the footage coming from this camera, and stay till the end because we'll be doing some sound tests against the X2 and the new ability to plug in a Rode Wireless Go. Oh, and before we jump in, this isn't a paid review. Insta360 did send this gear in for us to test on the channel, but all views are our own. Okay, so let's take a look at the footage coming out of this camera. Now, the most important thing is, what does the footage look like on the X3? And really, has it been improved? Well, looking at these shots here, you can see it looks great, especially when you have some really good weather. And I think the X3 is producing some really excellent footage. Now, even though it does say it's a 5.7K camera, that's for the whole 360-degree view. When you actually go to crop your footage down to 16:9, or maybe for Instagram stories, you're cropping into that 5.7K and you're going to end up with something closer to 1080p footage. But as the X3 now has a larger 1/2-inch sensor and 48-megapixel camera, we should see some more clarity over the older X2. Now, honestly, I didn't think there would be a huge difference between the X2 and the X3, but looking back at some of the older footage of the X2, I would say there is a little less noise and there's a little bit more dynamic range, which is kind of what you would expect from a larger sensor. So whilst the footage is looking better out of the X3 to my eyes, I wouldn't say it's a huge jump from the X2. So if you already own an X2, you may want to consider whether you should jump to the X3, but keep watching to find out more. Now, this is one of my favorite shots to get with the Insta360, and this is the walking hyperlapse. Now, whilst you can do a hyperlapse with something like a GoPro, I don't think you can beat the 360 for the amazing result you get from the camera. And what's great is that you can also reframe the hyperlapse after you've filmed. So with a GoPro, you can only face forward and that's the shot you're gonna get and the shot you're stuck with. With this, you could actually use that same shot and make 4 separate hyperlapses with 4 different angles, one facing the sky, one facing the floor, one facing forward, one to the side. And it really makes for some interesting shots. Next up, it said that the X3 has improved HDR. So we tried this out a few times, and I'll be honest, I didn't see a great deal of difference between the HDR and the normal footage. It does look like there's a little more contrast in the shots, the blacks look a little deeper, and there's a little more detail in the skies. But for me, I'll probably not record in this mode, as the regular modes look pretty good just straight out of camera. Now, it's important to note here, you do have picture profiles here on the X3, and you can film in a log profile. So, as I say, I'm going to stick to the standard profiles as I think they look nice and punchy straight out of camera, and I'm using this really more for travel videos or as an action camera replacement. So that's great for me. I can just get the footage out, do some edits, and get it up online. But if you do want to match the footage closer to, say, something like a Sony a7S III in terms of like your color grading, it is good to know that you've got the log profile on there and this camera can handle that. Next up is the bullet time effect. And I've never actually tried this out on an Insta360, but they actually included this bullet time handle in this little bundle here, and I'll go over all of the accessories a little bit later on in the video. But this one essentially means you can attach one of these selfie sticks. Obviously I've got this a little close to my head, and then it's going to enable you to spin the camera around like this and get some really cool Matrix style shots. So once you've connected your selfie stick, you can pop the camera over your head and, as I say, do some Matrix style shooting with this. Lewis took it out in Manchester and got these shots. Next up is a shot called the time shift. Now this is very similar to a hyperlapse, but you can use this if you maybe want to show off a statue or a building. You can get some really nice effects with the X3 and the time shift. And now let's take a look at the time-lapse in 8K. So for this, you do want to stick your Insta360 camera on a static tripod. You don't want to walk around when you're doing this. And this should enable you to get an 8K time-lapse. Now, just like the video, if you crop into this, you're cropping into that 8K footage. But this is a time-lapse we did here straight out of the office. And it looks pretty good. As you can see, we've got the clouds going by, some people walking past, and we exported this in 4K. So what do you think of this? Now, before we get into the shot labs, the camera's also been upgraded. It's now a 48 megapixel camera. And whilst this isn't probably something I would buy to use as a camera, you of course can, and you can create 360-degree cameras. So maybe also if you've got a business and you want to create those Google Street View style shots or the Google Street View walking shots, you can do that with a camera like this. So here's some of the photos coming out of the X3. Okay, if you download the Insta360 app, you can find these shot lab effects. Now, they do look a little bit complicated to achieve, but honestly, the camera does all of the work for you. So Lewis walked from our offices here in the city centre down the Manchester canals and just some single walking shots. So this is literally just Lewis walking with the camera on a selfie stick and just walking straight through the city centre. And what you can do is you can use these single shots and put them together as a cine-lapse. And so what it will do is it will produce these action drone style effects, and everyone I've shown these to has been really blown away by this footage. And I think, again, due to the amazing nature of a 360-degree camera, you can get shots like this that you just can't get with any other camera. With a GoPro, you would have to literally face the camera left or right. You would have to spin the camera upside down in some cases to get that barrel roll effect. But again, looking at this footage here, this looks like it was shot on a drone flying through the city centre, and it was just held a few feet above Lewis's head. So I really love this cine-lapse effect. And then we've got the sky swap. So we tested this out going over a little bridge in Manchester. And as you can see, you can completely remove the sky with AI, and you can change this with pretty much anything you like. But you can see here, we've done one with a starry night. You can either make it look like a disco or make it look like a work of art. And it's quite clever. I don't know where I would use this in a video, maybe the starry night if we're trying to fake that a little bit, but it's still impressive that you can do that on a camera and just the iPhone app. The next one we thought was a bit of a mind bender was the freeze throw effect. So essentially what you do is you throw the Insta360 up into the sky, and then it's going to create a video like this. It will actually kind of pause the video whilst the Insta360 is in the sky in post-production obviously, and then do a little 360 spin around and then drop the camera back down. It's a really cool effect because if you don't know about 360 cameras, it would be hard to understand how this shot is even done. So it's a good one to play around with, and I think this could actually be a great shot for a travel video. Okay, so let's talk about sound quality. Now, the sound quality is never that great on an action cam, I don't think, but Insta360 have told us that the microphones have been improved on the X3. So I tell you what, we'll do a little sound test here in the studio between the X2, the X3 with the ability to plug in the Rode Wireless Go, and then we'll do a couple of sound tests outside. So let's start with the X2. So this is an audio test with the Insta360 One X2 inside the Editors Key studio. Obviously we're indoors, there's not much noise. What do you think of the audio quality coming out of the X2? Now let's switch to the X3. Okay, we have now jumped over to the X3. This is the audio quality you can expect if you're recording in a studio like the Editors Keys one we've got here, and these should be the new improved microphones. What do you think of them? Now, there is one other trick up this camera's sleeve, and it's the ability to plug in a Rode Wireless Go. So we're going to try that next, because I think this is where the X3 is going to stand apart from some other cameras. So let's put on the Rode Wireless Go and do another sound test. So this is the Insta360 X3 with the Rode Wireless Go plugged in, and this should of course be a huge difference between the built-in microphones and Rode Wireless Go. This is the Rode Wireless Go that we use for all of the Editors Keys videos. So it's going to be interesting to see how that improves the video when you can go out and vlog with the Insta360, but get some really good studio quality audio coming through the Sennheiser and then the Rode Wireless Go. But now let's test out some outdoor sound tests between the X2, the X3 and the Rode Wireless Go. Okay, so this is the first test. This is with the Insta360 X2 with the built-in microphone, and I'm holding the camera on the invisible selfie stick from the second edition. So this is the audio quality from the Insta360 X2. Now let's switch to the X3. So now we are on the Insta360 X3. These are the internal microphones on the Insta360. How do they sound compared to the X2? There should be some big improvements here. And just to let you know, I've got both microphones on the X2 and X3 set to wind reduction because we're outside and there's a little bit of a breeze. But how does it sound? Next, we're going to use the X3 using the Rode Wireless Go. Okay, so now we are using a Rode Wireless Go with the Insta360 X3. And this is a big deal. You could do this on the X2, but I never actually tried it before. And I think when you're creating videos, it's the audio which is the most important thing. You really do need your audio to be good. So how is the audio sounding? I'm using the invisible selfie stick from an arm's length. But what's interesting is the audio is always going to be good. I'm using a Sennheiser lav into the Rode Wireless Go. And what I'm going to do now is just extend the selfie stick as far as it will go. And even though you're now quite far away from me, the audio should still be really good because we're using that wireless microphone system. So this means you can get some really creative shots, or you can leave the Insta360 further away from you and get some really good audio. Now there is one other thing I want to show you, and that's the single lens mode of the X3. So we're now using the new mode. This is the single lens mode of the Insta360 X3. And so what this does is it actually improves the resolution. So this is 4K, and it would bring you closer to a GoPro. I don't know if it would be as good as a GoPro Hero 11, but it does mean you are just shooting forwards or backwards. You can rotate the camera around, so I could now be facing backwards, but it should mean if you do want to do some just general vlogging, the image quality should be a lot better using this single lens mode. I probably would keep using the 360 mode because I think it's so handy when you've got a camera like this that you're capturing everything that you do. So what's the image quality like? Let me know. Next, let's try the Me mode. So just to quickly show you this is the Me mode. It's a bit strange because you have to hold the Insta360 out like this, but what it should do, no matter what I do, no matter how I turn, it should always make me the kind of subject for shooting. So if you don't want to worry too much about reframing in post, you don't have to. This is the mode to use for that. And this is the Me mode on the X3. So that's the sound tests out of the way. Now let's talk about some of the specs and what else is new with this camera. So if you're watching this and thinking of getting one of these cameras for the very first time, or you're thinking of upgrading from the X1 or X2, there are some main new features that you should know about. First of all, the X3 has a big 2.29-inch touchscreen, which really does make navigating the menus a lot easier than before, especially if you're coming from the X1, which didn't have a touchscreen at all. There's also 4 buttons on the camera, which make it a little easier to navigate, especially if you're wearing gloves. I felt that with the old cameras, you really needed to have the iPhone or Android app to use the camera a lot more. So it's handy. With the X3, you can leave your phone in your pocket. We've got a bigger 1800 milliamp hour battery on the X3, which is also a welcome addition. Now, the X2 battery life was pretty good, and so far the X3's seems to be a little bit better. The sensor in the X3 has also been upgraded to a 1/2-inch sensor. So whilst the resolution is 5.7K in both the X2 and the X3, because we've got that 1/2-inch sensor, it's gonna let in a lot more light, which is also gonna allow for less noise in low light situations and a little bit more dynamic range. And I think you can actually tell. I think if you were watching one and then the other, you may not be able to see, or a lot of your audience may not be able to see, but side by side you can definitely tell there's a performance upgrade and image quality upgrade with the X3. But of course, you're the one watching the footage, so let me know in the comment section below, are you seeing a big difference in the image quality between these two cameras? Now, almost all of the footage that you've seen during this video does require a couple of extra accessories, and mainly it's one of these selfie sticks. So let's talk a little bit more about the accessories. So this is something new this year. This is the brand new super long invisible selfie stick, and it can actually go up to 300 centimeters in length. So that should mean we should get some drone style shots using the Insta360. So let's try it out around the Manchester markets. So that was the huge selfie stick, but what about the standard one? What I noticed when they sent us the new one, I almost told them not to bother sending one because we already had this one, but there's even a difference between the new and the old. Now, this is the new one here on my right, and as you can see, it's a little bit smaller than the one on the left. It's a lot lighter and a lot thinner as well, but it's actually longer than this one on the left. So it might be an upgrade. If you want less storage and less weight when you go on your travels, it could be worth getting the new invisible selfie stick. Insta360 have also sent us this dive case, but it's December here in England, -3 outside, so you're not going to see me getting in the sea anytime soon. But make sure you subscribe to the channel because we will be doing some underwater tests with the Insta360 and the GoPros when it gets a little bit warmer and we can get back in the sea.